How's it going, everybody? Coming to you with a special video today because I am sitting in a room at long last with my lovely boyfriend. Say hi, Heiko.
Hi, Heiko.
So today we're taking a look at Marvel Rivals. Heiko is an artist. He's an art teacher. He's working on a web comic of his own. A graphic novel of your own.
Same difference.
He's an incredible artist. I'm going to link something of his in the description, probably. We'll see. Really good stuff. And he hasn't seen much of Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals has some really cool character designs, some really cool aesthetics, a really cool art style. So I figured I'd show him character by character, costume by costume, and get his commentary. To see what he thinks is interesting, what he thinks is good or bad. Maybe give some advice to the art director. And yeah. I've also got let me pull this up. I've also got a tab with the costumes that you can't get anymore that I don't have. So we'll swap to that every so often. Let's see, we've got Scarlet Witch, Magic, Venom, Hawkeye, Captain America, Groot, Rocket Raccoon, and another Venom. So, let's see. Get back to this. We'll start with Adam Warlock.
All right. Let's see what we got.
Now, I'm not super familiar with Adam Warlock's story in the comics. He has something to do with the Soul Stone from the original Infinity War saga. I'm not entirely sure. Now, I can spin him around. I can zoom in.
Nice.
And out. So, this is Adam Warlock's base costume.
All right. So I'm going to try to describe some of like the shape language that's being used as well as I can without having like a pointer to kind of point stuff out. So one of the things they do is they kind of have things in some sections. So the top half of him is all designed with like this really cool gold color, gold yellow. That's pretty much primarily like the top half of him. And then he has kind of like this dark pants. And then they support that color scheme by like the back of his cape is also black. They could have kept that as that nice red color on the back. But they're doing that so they have like this really nice upward motion of like, hey, come look at the top of this cool heroic character. So it's like really simplified in the color scheme that way. And then with his kind of cape pauldrons here too, he also has like this kind of lightning decal that's going like straight towards his belly button. And then when you hit the belly button, there's like those two swishes over his hip that kind of bring you back up a little bit. So there's a lot of nice movement here. In general, a lot of superhero comics in general too, because they're trying to do these like heroic figures of the human body. They'll have like big trapezoid shape. People call it the Dorito shape.
Mm-hmm.
So that they look like big and buff and bold, and it's like just a really pleasing shape to look at too. So some of the designs that they're putting in the front of these costumes are really supporting that. And then kind of the secondary details, like they're cutting up those vertical lines with the kind of lightning shape with some of these horizontal lines going over the muscles. So if you look at his like pecs and other muscles, they're all have these sort of horizontal lines going on there. That way we're not all so overwhelmed by the verticals that we're just like shot straight down or up or straight up. We have some other places to go, and it has this contrast. Because in visual language, contrast is interest. So if there's no contrast at all, we just go, oh, yeah, that's a thing. You know?
If he was solid gold from top to bottom.
Yeah, if he was just like so solid, then he would be like, oh, this gold, and then there's like not a lot of extra. And then a lot of the other spaces too, like the white areas just filled in with some texture to contrast with some of the areas that maybe have a little bit less of texture.
I think he's a little too greebled for my taste, but
he does have a lot of texture. There's not a lot of plain areas. There's like a little bit in some of the lower parts of the costume. But again, I think that's just the artist trying to balance like, all right, I'm going to put like texture heavy on the top. But I think if we went and scrolled down to like his pants and things, I think we're just going to see a lot less of those like fine texture details. Like, you know, we don't have any of the tessellations that are on the cape. Or really much of any texture. There's a lot of, you know, because of the style that they're going for, there's a lot of kind of lines and things on his pants, but not really like a full covered texture for anything. It's pretty smooth. And let's look at the cape, back of the cape for a second, because I thought that was pretty interesting. Because when you're playing the game, this is going to be like your primary view anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's just like something kind of nice and flowing and colorful, so you keep track of your character as you're running around.
Yeah, the game actually doesn't let you look at the front of the character in actual gameplay. He'll turn, if you turn the camera, he turns around, so he's constantly facing away from it.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, when you're picking out a character to play, they want like this cool front view, so you'd be like, oh man, which is the cool heroic character I want to battle with today. I talked a lot about this one. Should we look at some other ones?
Okay. Every character's got recolors. This is the base recolor that you can pay for.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, they're keeping with the same idea. Like they have most of the yellow on top, and then they're keeping like they mix it up with like it's not all black, but they have enough green accents that it basically kind of meshes into one color. But what's cool too is I just this suit I pick up the rim light a lot more, which is the kind of light bluish color that's on the edges of the one side. I think that's the right side of him, because that is really what's defining his legs. Because if there wasn't a rim light at all, I think he might disappear a little bit, but they're using that as part of their style, and that just adds a little bit of what we call visual clarity, which means if I look at something, can I easily discern what it is, or does it kind of get lost? And there's always like a push and pull with that. Sometimes you on purpose try to lose things in the background. Sometimes you define it on purpose, because if it was lost, it would be really confusing. And there's a little bit of a gradient too, so they're making it so it's not just a harsh gold to black transition like his base color did.
Yeah, his abdomen is a little green leading into the belly button thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this one is, I don't know if it's like maybe, I think just a color scheme thing, or it could have just been a stylistic choice for that. I think it looks really nice.
Oh, here's a fun thought. You want to rate these out of 10?
Out of 10? Oh, you're going to make me think too much if I have to do that.
Okay,
oh.
Well, we can...
Although I did notice he has some black fade in too.
Oh, yeah, so he does.
Now that I can pay attention to it. I think I just interpret that as a sort of shadow rather than a color gradient on that one.
All right, here's a second recolor, which you could only get via a Twitch drop.
Whoa.
This is vibrant.
Yeah, that is very vibrant. Man, almost too vibrant. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. But, gosh, it's like almost like the yellow is just a little too orangey. I wonder if I would have, like, pulled the yellow more to a grayish tint or something that would have fit better with all those blue colors. Or maybe like a lighter yellow. Because I feel like the yellow is just not matching. It's very clashing with that bright teal, bright purple, and then gold.
So what's the difference between colors that contrast and colors that clash?
Well, there's these color theories talk about color harmonies, which is sort of like systems that we kind of put together to decide, do these colors look like they should exist in the same environment together? And some of the way that works is like if you have a color wheel, like say you had red and orange, if you want a color that looks like it's going to mix with that, you might mix like a blue, but the blue is way colder than those two. So you might mix the blue with some red and you'll get maybe like a purple, but it'll be a warmer purple and it'll look like it should go a lot more with the color scheme. So like maybe with this one might have looked maybe a little bit better. There's a warm purple, but the blue is so cold on this one. They could have maybe had a gray or blue or something that might have fit better. Because I think the hair is almost on that path. It's just a little bit less saturated, which means it's less bright. But it just doesn't seem like it wants to mess with that gold for me.
Oh, his hair actually ends purple. Interesting.
Yeah. But like trying to mix like those colors with gold was kind of a tough go-to, I think.
Yeah.
Like stuff for gold, I would like to do warm colors. You can do complements with the complement of yellow is purple, which I think is why the purple seems like it doesn't really clash as much. It's more of a complement kind of color. I think it's really the blue that's on this one that's kind of doing that for me.
All right, next up, this is a Battle Pass skin.
Wow, that's really fun. So now we have like a totally different costume and vibe because now I have just all these extra accessories. I really like the bat-shaped staff here. This is fun.
Yeah, this is very Heiko core.
But there's a lot of little fun additional details in this costume too that just kind of give this vibe of like ancient explorers. We have like this giant tome on his hip and like some kind of caged artifact on the other part of the belt. And then to kind of create a little bit more movement, there's some little dangly belts and baubles and things. And yeah, this was really nicely balanced. The one thing I really like that they do in their style is like there's like a lots of detail in them, but they're very balanced. So if you look at like there's this big decal on the chest part of his robe, but then that transitions out to a part that has not any detail at all. And then they keep that detail density in like the abs and like in front of the front part of the tunic. And then they kind of let the detail kind of fade off a bit on the pant legs. But because that costume is so top heavy and like on the top there's like lots of layers and stuff, they also make the boots really top heavy. So like the trim on those boots have these like giant gems and stuff. Because they could have made like a slim boot, but it just wouldn't have balanced as well. Because they already made the top such big shapes, like big pauldron, big cape, big gloves, big hood. You know, it's like there's a lot of what we call visual weight because bigger something is, the more visual area, and then we call that weight because it kind of feels heavy. So that heaviness is then, you know, reflected on those boots again too, which is really nice on that design. What's the backside looking at like on here? Oh, that's really fun. There's even like a little animated effect too on there too.
Oh yeah, I never noticed that.
Yeah, I think it's on the pauldron too a little bit. That's nice because that animated effect is, and it's really bright white. It's the only bright white on that whole design, so you're not feeling like you're competing in too many areas of where to look. You know, because it's like we were saying, like this is pretty much your primary view of your character when you're running around.
Yeah.
And then, like, if you zoom out a little bit, the gold sections on that back of that cape. Calm down, Warlock. They form almost like a triangle pointing downwards. And there's, like, some additional details and flags and stuff. But the overall shape is just a triangle. So when we talk about, like, that high bit of complexity, but it's all contained in, like, really organized shapes. Which is why all that detail isn't just getting lost or overwhelming their designs. They're very purposefully chosen in the way that they decide to put them together. So it's kind of how you work as an artist. You know, you're like, big shape. Now I can feel the big shape with all sorts of little complicated stuff. And it's not going to overwhelm the design overall.
All right, next up is his MCU skin, because he apparently shows up in Guardians 3.
How fun. He's got a new haircut. Nice slicked back look.
Yeah, I like it better than his default haircut.
Gosh, so I remember the default haircut when we were first learning how to draw anime stuff. Like that double swish was like really popular. And then we're all like, no, we need to start transitioning to draw just the antenna, which he has here. Mm-hmm. The one antenna. Yeah, this one's a bit different from his other one too, but we have I really love the triangle shape from the top of the cape and the pauldrons that lead into his chest. And then, like, it really wraps around with the pecs, too, but it follows a different path than a lot of other designs usually do. Because a lot of designs are going to start from the pec and then wrap over the shoulder, because that's the natural kind of path that the muscle there takes. But this one follows down and goes along the rib cage. So we're going down and around the rib cage, which is just creates this really nice shape. It's almost like a double U shape sitting, like, right on top of his torso. So we get just kind of a different flow. And they both work really well. It's just like this is a really nice way to make a different design and differentiate it from the other one. Because the other one is like two lightning bolts that kind of point straight to his belt. And this one is, you know, a little more wrapped around. I was going to pay attention to some of the other parts of the design too.
I think his legs are a little weirdly busy.
I think like that one, they try to do the kind of wraparound shape, but instead it doesn't quite come across as cleanly. because there's kind of like, it kind of looks like there's a piece of armor on the side of his thigh because of the way the lines are drawn with the red.
Mm-hmm.
Where like it doesn't feel as satisfying as the wraparound on his chest, because that feels like a big piece of armor. You know, it's got a big solid shape to it, and then there's lots of littler shapes that feed into that too, so it feels really connected to his costume instead of just feeling like a piece that sits on top. What I do like though is the red accents, because we have kind of like a lot of it on top of his shoulders and leading into that triangle shape on that chest piece. Then no red, then there's red on his belt and pretty much his entire arm pieces, his gauntlets there. And then we got a little bit of an accent on the legs, and then like entirely red boots pretty much. So this is kind of like a nice use of the space. There's a division rule too in art that sometimes we use, where it's like, usually it's like small, medium, big, and you can mix and match that any way you want. But if you're going to separate how much, like say, accents you're going to use on a design, we kind of have like medium at the top with the little red, then we have kind of like small with the belt and the gauntlets, and then we have big for the bottom half. And sometimes they'll try to do thirds too, where it's more even, but this, for some reason, small, medium, big just seems to visually work really well. Something about our eyes are just really attuned to finding patterns, and that pattern of small, medium, big just feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
And our brains don't seem to care in what order it is. It could be like this one, like I said, is medium, small, big, but it's just a nice ratio that doesn't feel too predictable, and so it makes for really nice design. What's it got for his cape on this one? Oh, fun! That's like a huge arrow. And then, yeah, that kind of feels like a good idea for like a Guardians of the Galaxy kind of thing, because like the arrows are like usually like, you know, pointing straight to justice. So it's like a really fun design. Kind of cool how they cut it, yeah, because it could have just been like one big triangle, but like, I think that just a little more interesting to add the arrow shape.
All right, he's got one more costume.
I know I'm talking a lot of the costumes. I also just admire like the little slight textures of stuff too.
I'll get to that in a minute, but let's look at this costume first, and then we'll discuss something that occurred to me while we were making this video.
All right. Well, this one's really fun too. This is also a really different one with a lot of little additional details and things. Again, this is like really great color work too, because like the majority of our colors here are kind of like a brown, a black, and they're mostly very similar. And then yellow. Yellow's kind of our pop color, and that goes with like his general character color as well. And the yellow is not overwhelmingly used in a lot of areas. It's like pretty much primarily the top, because you know, you're looking at your heroes, you're like, you want to see the face and everything. It's kind of like the, you know, medieval you know, armor thing. You know, you don't put the helmets on the people because you want to see the face.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you're zoomed out, if you do that a little bit, like there's not really a lot of yellow. Some of the yellow that is used on the bottom too is much lower saturation, like the embroidery details on that cloak. That is not at all the same yellow that is used on like his shirt or those little tassels that he's got on his belt. Fun idea for teal for a really interesting spot color, and to only use that in the middle of a suit. But I think it works here really nicely because it just prevents him from being too monochromatic, so it doesn't just feel like one giant shade of yellow. Gosh, even these gold accents, if you kind of stare at them, they're almost a little warmer. Like they got a little bit more reddish. Like especially if you compare it with the skin color, it's a little bit more reddy than it is yellow.
Yeah, it's a little orange in there.
Yeah, not by a lot. It's just like that little bit of a smidge, and that's another like interest thing, you know. Where you don't know because you got me.
I'm not an artist. That's why I brought you on.
You know how normal people just look at art and go, "Wow, that the color is a little bit more orangey. Can you see the orangey color?" And yeah, I'll just look at like the stream screen too over here. Like maybe you're not seeing it on there because there's a little bit of color difference, but it is there. There's like he's got really golden yellow skin, and then the dragons and the other gold accents are like a warmer kind of gold, to the point where it's not bronze. It's still clearly supposed to be some kind of gold copper color, but it's just really nice variety there. Just keep them interesting. And yeah, this has got a really good use of the small details versus no detail too, because like I love the front on the boots. If you turn them just right, there's like a ton of little detail in the yellow area, and then not so much in the gray area. And that goes with like the embroidery and everything else. Like all the gray areas are like super smooth, not a lot of tiny itty bitty detail, and then they put high density in certain areas, and they just balance it so nice, so that it's not, you know, detail city in one particular spot on these designs. And then I just like the cool spiky things on his arm.
Yeah, I just noticed these. This just came out, and I haven't taken a good look at it yet.
But
the
that's
Batman spikes on his arms are pretty cool.
Yeah. And this kind of, I know they probably did that because it's cool, because some of the times you draw something and it's just like, yeah, I'm just going to put this here because it looks cool. But it does present a nice echo of like the dragon pauldron things too, because they're up there and they're like pretty visually heavy too. So it's just kind of like big spiky shape and then another smaller spiky shape that still points up, so you feel like you're, you know, moving your eye around this design. Like you go down and then you come back up. I like this one. And that's a nice cape too. This one's a little different because all the other ones have been pretty much triangles so far. This one, they mixed it up a little bit and they did more of like a curved line. So they kept it very orderly. So the curves are like symmetrical for one, and two, they're just flowing really nice. You know, like big wide curve, small gentle curve, and then they all point to that gem, so that, you know, they're all trying to lead you up to the top of the hero, which is mostly probably where you should be looking. And the arrows kind of do that too. Anything with arrow is going to point you to some direction. But I feel like this one's a little bit different. This one's kind of pointing you up to kind of pay attention to the top half of him. Some of the other ones seem like they're flowing out, which for this game is not a bad thing, because you want to be flowing out and probably looking at your environment anyway. This is, you know, this one's a more focused Warlock. You know, he's locked in. So yeah. So if you're not winning with Warlock, this is why. You gotta pick the locked in. Locked in Warlock.
The Warlocked in. All right, let's take a look at... Whoops.
Oh, whoops. I didn't know they had that Marvel character in this game.
These are, if you put on the headphones, there's sound for these. These are the MVP animations that play at the end of a match if you do the best in the match on the winning team. This is his default one.
Fun.
This is the Hycocore one.
Nice.
This is his MCU one. This one's a little weird. I'm not sure I like this one.
That was a little less punchy.
And this is his new one.
Nice.
Okay, so what do you think of the Adam Warlock designs overall?
Yeah, I mean, overall, honestly, I think the Minus Touch Immortal Dragon here, this one was one of my favorite ones. But, because, you know, like, for superhero design, like, usually they do try to keep it pretty simple, because we're talking a comic book design. But this is a game, so they can get a little more wacky with it. So, like, I feel like for a comic book, like, that lightning bolt design is very iconic. It defines him from pretty much every other hero that we could possibly look at. And that's hard to do, because when you're sticking with that same Dorito design, which has not been deviated from very much, you have to pick other options to make your character stand out and not be confused for another character, which has happened before, because I definitely seen like people read something and they're like, oh, guy in a red suit, that must be so-and-so superhero, right? And it's like, no, that's actually some other superhero, because there's like 100, 200, 300 of them. So, you know, he definitely has an iconic enough design to work with that. Trying to say it's my favorite though, but it's just like, it's simple, it works. I don't hate it, but I don't think I'd like this would be one of the characters I would pick based on design.
He's got a weird play style too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I really, really like the level of detail you got into this character with. However, it took us 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So if we do every character in this level of detail, it'll take us 5 hours.
All right, 5
So-
hours. Let's go.
So my proposal is we do each video on one character, and we'll record a few videos today, and get back to this the next time we get a chance. What do you think? Shall we go character by character?
I mean, if you want that level of detail,
Do you want to do that level of detail? Because I liked it.
art nerds probably want that level of detail.
I think that's why people are tuning into this kind of video.
But yeah, that's it. So some of the stuff I was explaining, will be covered in this video, so maybe I won't have to retread ground as much when we start talking about the other things. But I have to remember, because I've done so much schooling, that when I talk about some of these things, like color and things, I know what I'm talking about, but I forget that not everybody knows these definitions. And I don't want to leave everybody, like, in the dust wondering, they said what? They're speaking in tongues. But yeah. We could do individual characters. This might take a while.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll be the Adam Warlock video. Stay tuned for the Black Panther video. See you guys in a moment.